Well, Gina Miller was on BBC Breakfast recently bemoaning about Boris Johnson suspending Parliament for 5 weeks, which actually works out to be 4 parliamentary sitting days. So as usual, the Remainers have created a storm in a teacup, spearheaded by the undemocratic traitors in Parliament and the mainstream media. She was on the show to discuss her legal proceedings against Boris Johnson for what she calls an illegal proroguing of Parliament, which is obviously ridiculous. I wasn't aware a Prime Minister's executive order could be illegal, and it seems neither does Gina Miller. This is just a shot in the dark by this Ramonin Trout and her EU backers now they realise the downfall of the EU is close at hand. Let's see what she had to say.
Well, the anti-Brexit campaigner Gina Miller, who previously won a legal battle against ministers over Article 50, has made a new judicial review application to the courts about Mr Johnson's decision. And we can speak to her now. Thank you very much for coming along to talk to us on BBC News at 9. What grounds, first of all, are you basing your application for this judicial review on?
Because she likes to...
Ramon!
The grounds are quite simply that legitimate powers that sit with the Prime Minister
are being used, and I don't like it. So like a petulant child, I will...
Ramon!
are being used in an illegal manner, in that the effect or intention of this prorogation for 5 weeks would be to hamper the hands of Parliament and deny them the ability to pass legislation to stop no deal if that's what they wish to do. So it's about limiting the voice of Parliament, and as a representative democracy, our view is that that is illegal.
OK, so Gina's bullshit excuse that makes her think this is illegal is the nonsense claim Parliament won't be able to pass laws and such before Brexit, which Jacob Rees-Mogg has already debunked because there will be plenty of time for Parliament to sit and debate law, motions and their treachery. I mean, she even admits she doesn't know whether Boris has done anything illegal, which is rather telling in my opinion. She just hopes he has, which makes me think she does not have a leg to stand on, because during the Article 50 case against Maybot, she was confident she was right. Now she is not, and since the PM used an executive power, I'm sure the courts cannot challenge that. Lord Sumption also said something along the same lines the other day, so I am fairly confident she is wasting other people's money. This whole case shows the hypocrisy of this worthless cumbucket though. She is the Remainer who made MPs vote to invoke Article 50, which set no deal as the default after 2 years. October the 31st is the day her court case gets what it asked for. The Democratic Parliament voted for Article 50 after the people voted to leave in the 2016 EU referendum. It should be illegal for unelected, unwanted spunk trumpets like Gina to interfere in the democratic wishes of at least 17.4 million people, but apparently it's not. It's a real shame we can't take these traitors to court, in my opinion.
So is it about the intention behind this action of proroguing, suspending Parliament, or is it challenging the legality of the advice given to the Prime Minister?
No, it's because she has to.
Ramon!
It is both, because it's actually challenging the legality of the advice given to the Queen by the Prime Minister to prorogue Parliament. And, this is not a usual use of this power. In modern times, we have not seen Parliament prorogued for 5 weeks, whatever the number 10 may say. It is using a legitimate power, we believe, in an illegal manner to close down or deny Parliament its voice.
I would love to know how she could prove the advice given to the Queen by Boris Johnson was illegal. Since she is not a Privy Council member, she would not know what advice was actually given, or is she just spending a lot of people's money based on mainstream media reports? She will not have access to this information, nor would she ever be allowed to see it. Her claim that proroguing Parliament for a Queen's speech is not a normal use of the PM's executive power is complete rubbish. They've done it every year with the exception of the last couple. Of course, the Biased Broadcasting Corporation won't pull her up on these blatant lies though. They let her peddle more nonsense, like Parliament has not been prorogued for this amount of time in the modern era, which is once again wrong. Parliament has been prorogued multiple times for longer than Boris plans to, and let's not forget, Gina, the former Prime Minister who is backing your case happens to be the PM who prorogued Parliament for 6 weeks to avoid the cash for access scandal, something the BBC have failed to report on when talking about this traitorous scumbag John Major. I mean, you couldn't write this shit for a fictional novel if you tried. It's that unreal. Before now, you would never imagine the former Prime Minister who prorogued Parliament in 1997 to avoid parliamentary scrutiny over the cash for questions scandal, essentially dodging being grilled by MPs over alleged corruption, would 22 years later crawl out from under his rock to complain about the current PM proroguing Parliament for the first Queen's speech in 2.5 years. Only in 2019, during the largest outbreak of Brexit derangement syndrome, could such a thing be possible. Fiction couldn't even write it.
What do you say to the 17 million people who voted to leave the EU, who might say to you, well, you're talking about defending democracy, but actually you're thwarting democracy as far as we're concerned?
She would say you're all stupid and you don't know what you voted for. All that matters is I have to.
Ramon! Ramon!
I find it an extraordinary comment that actually ensuring parliamentary sovereignty, which was one of the main reasons people voted to leave. They said they wanted Parliament to be sovereign, that there would be any problem with defending that sovereignty. It is a pure nonsense argument to argue that defending democracy and sovereignty is somehow thwarting the will of the people. It is exactly what people voted for.
Can you believe this commie cumbucket finds it extraordinary that someone would accuse her of trying to stop the democratic wishes of the people because she wants to defend parliamentary sovereignty? Is she an MP? Is she fucked? Why is Parliament more important to her than the British people? Oh yeah, that's because most of Parliament wants to remain in the EU like she does. Her defending parliamentary democracy claims are bullshit though, for the same reasons I said earlier. Her court case made Theresa May get parliamentary approval for Article 50 and by extension a no-deal Brexit. Parliamentary democracy spoke, now it's time to act. So yes, Gina, what you are trying to do is block the democratic will of the United Kingdom for your own personal gain. Like all Ramonas these days, she tries to tell the Leave voters what they voted for in 2016. Last time I checked, the ballot paper said Leave or Remain. It did not say parliamentary sovereignty or Remain. It said get out of the EU or stay in it. The British voter said we have to leave the EU. Then the so-called Democratic Parliament invoked Article 50 with an overwhelming majority that set out the terms that we leave the EU under. People did not vote for anything other than to leave the EU. If everyone followed that basic common sense approach, democracy would have been upheld and we would be getting on with building up our economy and the normal day-to-day shit countries generally do. Instead, we have to listen to shitweasels like Gina flapping her gums. Boris Johnson has a mandate to get us out of the EU, so fuck off your trollop, it's all that matters.
The former Supreme Court Justice, Lord Sumption, has said the only objection is that the decision by Boris Johnson has been taken for questionable political motives, but that is not something that courts should rule on. He went on to say it might be considered unconstitutional in as much as it might be argued to be contrary to a long-standing convention of the Constitution. But he said conventions are rules, but not legal rules. I'm presuming your legal team have a very different opinion to that.
Of course they will have a different view to that. All they can do is...
Ramon! Ramon!
We do, and this is actually one of the main reasons why we're seeking a judicial review, because there are many different commentators with many different views. When I brought my case 3 years ago, we were in exactly the same position with many different opinions. It is for the courts to decide on the evidence presented to them whether or not this is illegal or not. We're not saying that we know the answer to that. We are approaching the courts and asking them to give permission to actually hear our arguments and the government's arguments.
And there's time to get this done, is there? Because many of the opponents of what Boris Johnson has done has talked about, time being squeezed for them, whether it's to stop a no-deal Brexit and potentially to get something through the courts as well.
Oh, I think the way that Downing Street and the advisors of the Prime Minister have played this has been truly extraordinary in the fact that they have used every trick in the book to try and deny people legitimate questioning and routes to stop no deal. In the case of the law, we have asked the courts to hear this as a matter of urgency next week. We will hear very shortly if that's given permission, and then there is time for us to go to court, for it to be resolved, and for this illegal prorogation, if it's ruled as such, to be stopped.
So we hear it from the horse bitch's mouth. Lots of political commentators are saying many different things, therefore it must be illegal and we should take the government to court. It's incredible. Talk about admit you have no legal basis for the case. Maybe she is just caving to activist pressure because they don't like Brexit or Boris Johnson, because she has no real legal basis, as we can tell from her words. Her claim the case 3 years ago was in the same position of this one is nonsense. That case would have merit since, as they all say, we live in a parliamentary democracy. Prorogation is part of that democracy, and as I keep saying, Article 50 was invoked by our parliamentary democracy with a massive majority. So a no-deal Brexit is also the democratic choice made by the elected representatives that was forced to vote on Article 50 by Gina herself.
Didn't opponents of no deal have the entire period of Theresa May's premiership to try to stop no deal as well?
Yes, they had 3 years, but all they did during that 3 years was
Ramon! Ramon!
So how could you ever expect them to get anything done?
That is not for me to say. That is for the Prime Minister, for the ministers. All I'm interested right now is this legal, what the Prime Minister is intending to do? Bearing in mind over the summer that we've been in legal conversation with the Prime Minister and his advisors since the 12th of July, and up until Monday evening at 5 o'clock, they sent us a letter saying that this was theoretical, that they had no intention of prorogation, and at the same time they were drafting the press release on prorogation. I think this really does need to clear up, and it has been misleading all summer as to their intention.
On a personal level, Gina, I just want to ask you, did you have to think in any way, shape or form twice about the decision to take on this new legal challenge, given the threats, the abuse that you've spoken about that you received over the Article 50 challenge?
Of course she's not worried about threats. Her only interest is that she has to.
Ramon! Ramon!
I mean, let's be honest, I expect half of them are probably fake anyway. And the rest are just going to be idiots on Twitter.
I'm on record when I got the letter, the first letter back from the government on the 12th of August, reassuring me over and over again, pages of it, that they would not prorogue, we didn't have to progress to court. I was delighted. I did not want to be in this position, but it is the Prime Minister's actions, which we believe is illegal, that has put me in this position. And I will step up and defend the right of MPs to represent us in Parliament.
Well, surprise, surprise, Gina Miller refuses to take blame for not stopping a no-deal Brexit during the 2 and a bit years we had Theresa the EU appeaser as Prime Minister, blaming ministers instead. Gina, are you forgetting you forced the MPs to vote on Article 50, which made no deal the default? So technically, it's actually your fault we're heading towards a WTO Brexit. So if we do leave without a deal on October the 31st, like Boris and Nigel Farage, you will be known as a hero of Brexit, because your misguided attempts to stop Brexit would have given us the mechanism to get the best Brexit of all. Had you not forced Maybot to let Parliament vote on Article 50, it would have been revoked already. Your court case made 498 MPs vote to leave on no deal if we did not get a deal through Parliament, making it extremely difficult to revoke. Thank you, Gina, you absolute fucking idiot. I know you never intended this, but we could still owe you a debt of gratitude if Boris takes us out on Halloween without a deal. That would be funny. She finished up moaning that the government had not told her they had planned to prorogue Parliament like she is so special and deserves to be privy to classified government plans or policies. The self-entitlement of this trout is unreal. Who does she actually think she is? The government do not answer to her. Just because the Maybot Ramona government did, don't mean Boris Johnson will. Let's be honest, Dominic Cummings would swiftly tell you to fuck off, love. It was probably him leading you morons on for the shit and giggle of it. If I was him though, I would be trolling Ramon in trollops like you as a pastime, Gina. You're lucky I'm not there. Only her concern is what the Remain MPs in Parliament want. She does not care about what the people want. Surprise, surprise. Well, I'm going to end the video there, guys. I just want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe Star members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Leave a like, subscribe with notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.